magic of reusable rockets. Methane serves as a particular...
Paragraph 1. Starting off the week on October 25th, we had the long-awaited return of Crew 8 to Earth following a longer-than-expected stay aboard the ISS. On board the Crew Dragon were NASA astronauts Matthew Dominic, Michael Barrett, and Jeanette Epps, and also Roscosmos cosmonaut Alexander Grebenkin, all of who originally launched to the orbiting outpost on March 8th earlier this year. This mission ended up being the longest crewed SpaceX mission to date, with the four spending 235 days in orbit. Endeavour, the Crew Dragon that brought the astronauts home, spent even more time in orbit, 701 days, which is a record of its own. While the splashdown went without a hitch, NASA released a press statement shortly after, saying there was a medical issue with an astronaut, who remained under observation as a precautionary measure. This health scare was short-lived, however,
out of control,
as the next day the agency
and once it
posted that
rolled
the
onto
astronaut
its
was
side,
released and is
it
in
began
good
to
health.
tumble and over.
The identity of the astronaut was not disclosed for privacy reasons, nor was the nature of the medical problem. Paragraph 2. On Saturday the 26th, we saw a Falcon 9 mission from Cape Canaveral's SLC-40 in Florida.
Engine ignition and liftoff. Liftoff of the Falcon 9.
The rocket lifted off at 5:47 p.m. Florida time, carrying a fresh batch of 22 Starlink V2 mini satellites to Shell 10. Booster B1069 splashed down safely on the drone ship in the Atlantic Ocean, marking its 19th launch and landing. 4 days later, on the 30th, we saw another Starlink launch from the same pad at 5:10 p.m.
Ignition and liftoff of Falcon 9. Go SpaceX. Go Starlink.
Carrying another batch of 23 Starlink V2 mini satellites to the low Earth orbit. The booster for this launch, B1078, landed safely for the 14th time on the A Shortfall of Gravitas drone ship in the Atlantic Ocean.
Stage 1 landing leg deploy. Stage 1 landing confirmed.
On the same day, we saw yet another Starlink launch, this time from Space Launch Complex 4E at Vandenberg Space Force Base in California.
4, 3, 2, 1, ignition and liftoff. Go Falcon, go Starlink.
Stage 1 propulsion is nominal.
This mission launched 20 Starlinks, including 13 with direct-to-cell capability. Ben Longmire, SpaceX's Senior Director of Satellite Engineering, took to X shortly after the launch, saying SpaceX was just 5 launches away from completing the first direct-to-cell constellation. The booster supporting this mission, B1075, touched down on the Of Course I Still Love You drone ship in the Pacific Ocean, marking its 14th flight.
Stage 1 landing confirmed.
Stage 2 FTS is saved.
This mission also happened to be the 200th SpaceX launch solely dedicated to the expansion of the Starlink constellation. These 3 missions bring the total number of Starlinks launched into the constellation to 7,213 satellites, 656 of which have re-entered, and 6,115 have moved to their final orbit. Moving to the east, we saw 2 launches in the past week, one from China and one from Russia. Starting off with China, we had the launch of a Long March 2F on the 29th of October from the Jiuquan Satellite Launch Center. The spacecraft shuttled 3 taikonauts, Kai Shu-shi, Song Lingdong, and Wang Haoshi, to the Tiangong space station in low Earth orbit.
1. Salute.
This was the 8th crew to arrive at the station, and they were welcomed aboard by the crew of Shenzhou 18, who themselves are packing up in preparation to leave the station sometime next week. Further up north, we had the launch of a Soyuz from the SpaceX Cosmodrome in northwestern Russia. Not much is known about the payload. save for the fact that it's an electro-optical sensing satellite for the Russian military. The satellite was successfully delivered into a sun-synchronous orbit not long after the launch. Over at Starbase, we've seen good progress with the Starship program. The first Block 2 Starship, Ship 33, was rolled out to the Massey site for cryoproof testing, which started on the 31st with partial filling of the liquid oxygen and liquid methane tanks. We don't know if the test was intended to be partial or if it was aborted for whatever reason, but we'll continue to keep an eye on this space and let you know what happens. Meanwhile, B-12, the booster that made history on the 13th of October by successfully landing on Mechazill's landing rails, was rolled out of the bay to the rocket garden. It's currently unknown if SpaceX plans to scrap the stage. SpaceX hasn't historically been hesitant to do away with their old hardware, as they did choose to scrap SN-15, the first ship to land without a rapid unscheduled disassembly. However, all's not lost for the venerable booster, as SpaceX does still display the first ever landed Falcon booster outside their headquarters in Southern California, giving a glimpse of hope to those who wish to see the booster preserved.